Nigeria Air Limited. We will get it going before the end of this administration. The aircraft are in place, the staffing and everything that we need to have in place.
It is May 2023. Nigerians are overjoyed. Some even glued to their TV to bear witness to the landmark event happening at the prestigious Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. At the center of this grand celebration stood a majestic Boeing 737-800 painted with the green and white national colors. It is the unveiling of the long-anticipated national carrier, Nigerian Air. This is not just about the airline. It is a symbol of rebirth, pride and progress after years of longing for a national carrier that could represent Nigeria on the global stage. Social media is exploding with congratulatory messages. Finally, Nigerians exclaimed, the nation's flag would now soar across continents, a proud testament to its identity and aspirations. But something is just not right. Soon enough, this joy and celebration will be met with confusion. Just a few hours after its unveiling, troubling details began to surface. Video evidence and pictures started circulating online, revealing a rather startling information. This giant aircraft that had just been unveiled and celebrated as Nigeria Air's flagship did not actually belong to Nigeria. It was borrowed from Ethiopian Airlines and hastily repainted for this occasion. The whole unveiling had been one giant scam. This revelation raised a lot of questions for many Nigerians as they were left wondering why the government would go as far as deceiving its own citizens into believing that the national airline was now functional. Was this an act of desperation by the outgoing Minister of Aviation to fulfill a promise before the administration of Buhari ended? Or was there something more at play here? This prompted an investigation that unraveled an insane fraud in the aviation ministry, and one man was at the center of it all.
The federal government has approved the Nigeria Air project to continue.
To fully understand Nigeria Air and the euphoria associated with the unveiling, let's go back to 1958 when the first national carrier was established. During the colonial era, Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone and the Gambia shared a regional airline known as the West Africa Airways Corporation. Shortly after its independence from the Brits, Nigeria took full ownership of its shares of this West African Airways Corporation to create what was then called Nigeria Airways. The airline quickly gained recognition as a formidable player in African aviation, with its operations headquartered in Lagos. Nigeria Airways was a source of national pride during its golden years in the 1960s and 1970s. Backed by government funding, Nigeria Airways was not just an economic venture, but a diplomatic tool strengthening Nigeria's global presence. It carried pilgrims on religious journeys, athletes to international competitions, and diplomats on state missions. By the 1980s, problems began to emerge in Nigeria Airways operations. First of which is one we've come to be so familiar with, which is corruption and mismanagement. This combo ravaged Nigeria Airways operations. Funds that were set aside for maintenance were embezzled, and aircrafts were left grounded due to unpaid debt. The first blow came in the form of over-reliance on government subsidies. Instead of operating as a self-sustaining business, the airline became heavily dependent on state funds, which were often mismanaged or diverted for other purposes. By the early 2000s, Nigeria Airways was on life support. Its debt had significantly increased to over $500 million, and its once proud fleet was reduced to a handful of aging aircraft. By May 2003, under President Olusegun Obasanjo, the government decided it was best to liquidate the airline. After 32 years of operation, Nigeria Airways died a painful death, leaving Nigeria without a national carrier. The decision was controversial at the time, but it was an inevitable one considering the state the airline was in. But this decision was not an easy one, as it directly affected thousands of lives, many of whom became jobless employees that were left stranded and now had to find ways to feed their families. Also, the absence of a national carrier created a void that no private airline could fill.
So Air Nigeria is dead. Long live Nigeria Air.
In 2017, the federal government of Nigeria announced plans to invest $5 million in an initiative to launch a national carrier. By July 2018, during the Farnborough Air Show in the United Kingdom, the then Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, unveiled plans for this new national carrier, Nigeria Air. The minister soon presented a sleek logo for this proposed airline, followed by ambitious promises. The project aimed to position Nigeria as a major hub for air travel in Africa. Sirika highlighted that Nigeria Air would adopt a public-private partnership model, ensuring that the government held a minimal stake of 5%, which indicates $12.5 million, with the remaining 95% owned by private investors. The minister further explained that a share capital of about $300 million would be provided by the preferred bidder, which would launch Nigeria Air to its full size of 30 aircraft and international operation in a period of 2 years. The vision for Nigeria Air was a bold one. It was meant to provide affordable air travel, connect underserved routes, and restore national pride. But despite the fanfare surrounding its announcement, Nigeria Air faced immediate skepticism and backlash. Many Nigerians criticized the decision to hire a Bahrainian company to design the logo, arguing that local branding and advertising companies could have done a better job for much less than the $600,000 allegedly spent. Oh, hold on a sec. Did I get that figure right? Well, the minister would later deny the $600,000 figure allegedly spent on branding, but he, however, failed to tell Nigerians the actual amount paid for the work. By September 2018, just 2 months after its unveiling, the project was suspended indefinitely as the government cited a lack of funding and stakeholder support, leading many to believe that Nigeria Air was yet another ambitious project that was dead on arrival. Now, to ensure the project's viability, the government sought international partners with proven expertise in the aviation sector. Ethiopian Airlines, Africa's largest and most successful airline, emerged as a key player. Soon enough, Ethiopian Airlines became the preferred bidder for the Nigeria Air project, with a 49% stake in Nigeria Air, providing operational and technical support. The African carrier was named alongside 3 Nigerian investors: MRS, Skyway Aviation Handling Company, and the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, with a 46% stake, leaving the federal government with the remaining 5%. At the center of this controversy was this guy, Hadi Sirika, a former pilot and an aviation enthusiast who served as Nigeria's Minister of Aviation under President Muhammadu Buhari. Sirika promised a transparent bidding process for private investors to acquire stakes in the airline. However, there was little public disclosure about the criteria used to select Ethiopian Airlines as the major stakeholder. Despite claims of limited government involvement, significant public funds were allegedly channeled into this project without clear accounting. It remains unclear how much was actually spent on the branding, publicity, and leasing of these aircraft. As the Buhari administration neared its end, there was a sudden rush to launch Nigeria Air. The unveiling was set for just days before the administration's handover, and many wondered why such an important project was delayed until the very last minute of an 8-year tenure. This raised further questions about the motives behind this haste. It would later be uncovered that over 8 years, the Nigerian government under Muhammadu Buhari spent over 85 billion naira on Nigeria Air. That is over $200 million at the time. Despite all this spending, the project showed no significant progress. Faced with mounting obstacles, Sirika reportedly pleaded with the NCAA to allow the Ethiopian registered jet into Nigeria for a demonstration flight as a symbolic gesture for President Buhari and his incoming successor to save face. But the NCAA again rejected this request, maintaining their stance on compliance. In a final bid to avoid embarrassment, Sirika reportedly devised a new terminology unknown in the industry to insist that the aircraft would be used for, quote, static display only without violating regulations. A few days before the arrival of the Nigerian Air aircraft, the Airline Operators of Nigeria, AON, criticized the launch, calling it a blatant violation of a Federal High Court order. The court had instructed the Minister of Aviation to halt plans to establish the airline until a pending lawsuit filed by AON was resolved. The AON also pointed out discrepancies in the process of acquiring an air operator certificate for Nigeria Air. They stated that the process was still in its early stages, stage 1 to be precise, contrary to the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika's public claims that it was in the final stage, which was stage 5. The unveiling of Nigeria Air on May 26, 2023 became one of the most controversial moments in Nigeria's aviation history. Sirika orchestrated what many now describe as a fake launch, misleading Nigerians into believing the airline was fully operational. Well, it turned out that just a few days before leaving office, the former aviation minister had reached out to Ethiopian Airlines for help in putting on a show. He basically asked them to provide a plane that could be showcased to Nigerians as one from the newly launched Nigeria Air. Ethiopian Airlines agreed and quickly repainted and rebranded one of their Boeing 737-800 aircraft to fit this narrative. But Nigerians, you see, are not as foolish as Sirika had hoped. Not all Nigerians anyway. This is David Hundeyin, an investigative journalist that had been a thorn in the flesh of many corrupt Nigerian leaders. When he turned his attention to the Nigeria Air saga, he was able to unravel what Sirika had hoped would remain hidden until another scandal took the place of his own. First, David used a flight tracker to expose how the repainted Ethiopian Airlines aircraft returned to its original service after the unveiling and the lack of AOC and other legal documentation. He also uncovered some fascinating details, revealing how the plane in question was identified by its registration tail number, ETAPL, a unique tracking code Q4005C with a serial number of 40965/4075. And it wasn't a newcomer to the skies, as it had been flying for around 11 years. Its first flight was back on June 22, 2012 under Ethiopian Airlines, and later on February 16, 2014 as it was leased to Malawi Airlines before returning to Ethiopian Airlines on August 12, 2015. The mask was off. Hadi Sirika was now out in the open for all to see what he had done. Some stakeholders demanded detailed investigation into how the project was handled in the first place, with many calling it a scam. They accused the former minister of misleading Nigerians, spending over 85 billion naira on the airline with no real results. The Nigerian House of Representatives called the launch fraudulent and accused Sirika of bypassing due process. Stakeholders and regulatory bodies like the NCAA denied involvement or approvals for the rushed unveiling. In the midst of this legal battle, Sirika painted himself as a victim of circumstance. Despite the gravity of all these charges, Sirika, his daughter Fatima, and his son-in-law Jalal all pleaded not guilty. For now though, they've been granted bail and barred from leaving the country without court approval. On August 5, 2024, the Federal High Court in Lagos ruled that the Nigerian government's planned partnership with Ethiopian Airlines to create Nigeria Air was invalid, effectively ending the project. Now that the fraud has been unveiled for all to see, the question we have now is, will Nigeria Air ever take off again?